This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit Xero.com/Accounting Insiders to learn more. Hello, welcome to another episode of Accounting Insiders. My name is Gary Dehart. I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant, the host of Accounting Insiders. My guest today is Ben Richmond, who is a country manager US for Xero. Ben's out of Denver. It's been, I think you said 7 years in Denver, 11 years with Xero, hailing from the wilds of New Zealand, right?
That's correct. Yeah, 7 years here, and I'm coming to you from a very snowy Denver. It's gone from very warm to very cold, so it's going to be a cold walk home.
Well, it's and how far is that? How far is the walk?
It's not too bad. It's only a 10, 12-minute walk, so I've got the right coat for it.
Okay, well, perfect. And then only 45 minutes, an hour, what, to the slopes? What, do you ski?
Yeah, I love skiing. Yeah, it's if it's not a holiday weekend and you pick the right time to go up the mountain, you can be on a ski slope just over an hour. So, but if you pick the wrong time, it could be a lot more. So.
Yeah, where do you go typically?
My favorite is actually Beaver Creek. It's just that a little bit, it's just past Vale. So it's about 10 minutes past Vale, but it's that extra 10 minutes seems to cut out a lot of day trippers. So you got a beautiful mountain, lots of runs, and not as many people.
Gosh, we skied there years ago. When I say years ago, that was probably, I hate to even think about it. Oh gosh. Probably 28, maybe even 30 years ago. It's been a long time since I've been there. We went, and the last time we really even went what I would call real skiing was, that's probably about 15 years ago too. But I'm with you. I love it. It is so much fun. Love getting out there in the weather. It's just no agenda. That's what I like about it. You really
we're pretty lucky here with the city because Denver's big enough to be a city and it's nice and central for flying around the US, but you can get into the mountains really quickly. So we're pretty lucky and grateful for that.
Yeah. And do you have a spring activity?
Yeah, I took up mountain biking a couple of years ago during the pandemic. It was a great exercise. So that keeps you fit, and you can see even more scenery with that.
Yeah, my son got into that 2 or 3 years ago and bought a decent bike, and he had a pretty big crash. Fortunately, we got a call from this guy this man was at the bike park, and he's like, "So I'm with your son. He's okay," and then he started rattling off all these things that he thought was wrong with him. It's like, I think he may have, broken his shoulder, broken his wrist. I mean, he's naming off all these things. He ended up with a broken pinky. That was it. But he hit a tree really hard. Like his buddies were filming it. He hit a tree really, really hard. And fortunately, that's all he broke. He broke his pinky.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's lucky. I've had a few close calls, and I'm always like, oh, I'm getting some of those accidents don't look like they would be fun to try and recover from. So it's fun going fast, but then you often start to try and slow yourself down a little bit because the crashes hurt.
Yes, they do. And the older you get, the more they hurt. So so recently when we first set this time up to have this call, which we've been working on it for about a month now, I think. Xero had just launched or just released a cash flow report, which is a report basically on cash flow and impact of cash flow on small businesses, if I'm correct in framing that. And basically, it's kind of 4 major highlights were, sorry, looking down here because I just want to read it to make sure I get it right. But so it's looking at the short-term financial challenges, the financial consequences of cash flow issues, impact on personal well-being, and then strategies deployed in dealing with these cash flow issues based on the current state of the economy. And kind of in the green room, we were talking, and there is the appearance that all is well and economy strong. Stock market seems to be doing okay. We're certainly told by government that everything's great. Don't worry about behind the curtains over here. But from the report's perspective, again, kind of hitting those 4 major highlights, what the report show kind of from for small businesses.
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I mean, we get a lot out of these reports. So we do quite a few reports regularly, both looking at our own data that's anonymized and aggregated. We do a lot of survey data as well, and sort of for two key reasons. One, it really helps us inform and understand what small business needs are and how we can think about how we solve that in the products that we build, how we can give that information to the accountants and bookkeepers that we partner with, so they can come at it from an advisory perspective. But you hit the nail on the head. I think there's so much noise out there and so many economic indicators still look good. But when you sort of, when we dug into this, yeah, and we asked, and so we surveyed over 540 small businesses here in the US, and asked them about, what are your top short-term financial challenges? 40% of them responded limited or inconsistent cash flow. And then even more worrisome was 29% called out that they don't actually have any cash reserved for any sort of rainy day or issues that came. They were the two things that came out on top. So that there's not nearly a third of small businesses don't have a rainy day fund, and we are heading into some more tougher economic times. I mean, it's definitely different industries are challenged at the moment, and I think so that to me is super worrying. And I think the other challenge is just how active a lot of small businesses don't actually know, aren't looking at running a cash flow. They don't know what their cash flow looks like in the next 3 to 6 months, and there's some real big challenges. And so when you think about what the consequences of having cash flow issues, so we asked this in the survey, the number one consequence that they were facing was 45% of them have not been able to pay themselves. So, when you're a small business owner and you might be just yourself, or you might employ a couple of people, you're the last one on the list to get paid off, and when you're trying to keep the business going.
Right.
And 22% of them, were struggling, were not being able to pay the bills. And even sort of at the worst end of the spectrum, 17% were unsure if they could even keep the business going. So, while there's lots of business out there where things are going well, there is definitely challenges starting to creep in, particularly on cash flow.
Yeah. And I think that's going on what you were just talking about. I think as a small business owner, I think that is one of the most difficult questions you have to ask yourself. And that is, does it make sense to keep this business going?
Yeah.
And, especially if it's something you put time, you put money, you put effort, blood, sweat, and tears into it. And, okay, maybe it's growing, maybe it's not growing as fast as you want it to grow, or maybe your customers aren't paying you fast enough, and it's really causing a pinch in many, many places. And that's a hard question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
But do you think, and now I'm gonna stray out of the report for a minute, but is that a question, in your opinion, and your background is accounting and audit? You deal with accountants clearly on a daily basis, just about, I imagine. Is that a question that the accountant needs to be asking his client or her client? No.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? The first piece is so many of these small businesses don't actually know what does my cash flow look like in 3, 6, 9 months. And they've done no scenario mapping on sort of worst case, best case, likely case. And they don't understand other levers they can pull to navigate that. And while we see huge growth in the CAS services that ABs are providing, we need them to be, this is a real opportunity for ABs to be getting out there and really going, hey, who are my businesses that need help? I'll share a personal story on it. Actually, my sister, who is much smarter than I am and a really hardworking small business owner, has a great business, fantastic products, fantastic reputation. She sells horse supplies. And we just went through a pretty tough couple of months, and I sort of give advice from time to time and have pseudo become an investor. Had a massive cash flow crunch. So she was running the business really well, focused on the product, as many small businesses are, not getting regular advice from an advisor. Her accountant was helping her optimize tax, and had this, an unforeseen event hit where we had a cyclone in the hometown down in New Zealand, and the big trade show, which is a big cash flow earner for her, got cancelled right after you've stocked up for that. And it really proves to me, like, you can have a great business, you can have a great product, a great reputation, but cash flow is the fuel to the car. So, Ferrari in the garage without any fuel to run the thing is a very expensive paperweight.
Right.
And so it just showed you how quickly the whole thing ground to a halt. She wasn't able to order new stock, satisfy website orders. The reputation of the business started to go down. And watching the emotional toll that took, because that business is obviously the lifeblood for her, the people that work for her, the lifeblood for her family. And there was nothing wrong with the underlying business, but when the cash flow crunch hits, the sales hit, and we had to go through that exact process of looking at, well, let's really dig into the business, map out some cash flow scenarios, because if we are going to look to find funding to get through this cash flow crunch, right? Like what is the funding to actually get it out of this cash flow crunch and get it back on track? And then right back to your point of the question, we also need to ask, is that the right thing to do, right? If the underlying business health is not good, we could be pouring good money to bed. And I think the importance for ABs is small business owners have an emotional connection to that business.
Yeah.
They may have built
Very
it,
tight.
they've taken over from someone in their family through succession, and that can often cloud a really objective mindset around that. The other scary thing is we know a lot of small businesses are powered by security and funding over the home mortgage, right? And so you often hear small businesses that are, taking money from family or extending the home mortgage to keep pouring in. If you're pouring good money into bad, then actually the end result's going to be worse. And so that's where I do think the role of an AB that can come in and yes, consider the emotional aspects of it as well, consider the other, the non-quantitative aspects, but actually come in at the numbers basis and go, like, do we have a strategy? Are the margins good? Are all those things good, so that if we pour money into this, we know we can trade out of it? Is it worth doing that? And while it's a tough role to play, it's actually a role that we are best set up to play, because we can help them, guide them to that reality of, hey, this might be the right time to cut loose, because my ultimate goal is to help you trade out of this and find a way to do that. But if we can't see a pathway forward once we've done this work, then I'd rather you cut your loss now before it gets even bigger.
Right. I heard I don't know, are you familiar with Andy Stanley? He has a podcast. He's a mega church preacher here in the Atlanta area, and he has a podcast. Yeah, it's very business oriented podcast. And he was sharing a story in one of his podcasts where he talked about two guys that ran Intel back, I can't remember the date, 70s, maybe early 70s, early 80s. And they basically said, one of them said, okay, well, we're barely surviving in our core business as it is. And his overall point was, you've got to ask yourself on occasion, if somebody else were to come in and take over this business, what changes would they make? And I think, that's a question that the advisor could very easily ask. And when they look at that cash flow or look at the bank statements and say, look, 2 months from now, unless X, Y, and Z changes, you're out of business.
Yeah.
And, what changes can we make today to prevent that from happening, tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, I think too, you're a fresh pair of eyes, you're an objective set of eyes, but also a lot of ABs and the ABs they work with in their network have a lot of deep experience in certain industries, right? And we're seeing many more accountants and bookkeepers are actually specializing in vertical niches. And so that small business owner may not be able to see the wood from the trees.
Right.
I mean, it's got that, when you get that emotional connection to it, you often you lose that objectivity. But the AB is coming out from let's say it's a retail business or an e-commerce business. You're going to have a general idea based on all the clients you work with on what good looks like. And so there's real power in that advice, because you can help sort of pull them out of the business and the day-to-day stress of running the business, and actually look at what all this data actually means and help them understand, hey, this is what best practice looks like. Your margins are here. The margin of a business that I generally work with in the space is here, and we need to understand why that is. And small business is tough. The small business owner has to wear every hat. It's not a corporate where there's a strategy team and an HR team and a marketing team. They're wearing every hat. And so, I mean, I've heard when I was in public practice and used to support, it was amazing how you would look at a product line and go, there's no margin on this product that you're selling the most things of here. And they would go, oh, it's a very defined strategy as a loss leading product to pull customers into the store. And again, now with technology, we can go, okay, well, let's look at customers that buy that product, and is that coming true? So you've got a strategy here. This is a loss-leading product which drives sale of other products with a higher margin. Well, let's jump into some of the reporting from the tools we're using and seeing it's true. And I remember in that case, when we did look, I call it businesses need to think about myth busting, and I think advisors can help. Let's challenge some of those things we think are true. I love the one, people think that the Great Wall of China can be seen from space, but apparently it can't. But we all believe that. So we looked at that product and said, well, it's not true. The customers that are buying this product that you're making no money on, which is a real pain on the cash flow, those customers aren't going on to buy other higher margin products. So the strategy isn't working, and so we should consider whether we pull out of that product. So again, that's where just a fresh set of eyes can really help pull them out and bust some of those myths.
And I believe would be greatly appreciated by the business owner as well. Right?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two things to it. We did a report a very long time ago, and one thing is we asked a whole lot of small businesses, where are you getting this type of it? Now, where do you think you should get advice on how your business is performing and get help around, do you have a cash flow problem or not, and different pathways to deal with whatever scenarios you're looking at. And most of them would give answers like, oh, my friend does it. I've got a customer who's actually a CPA that gives me some advice from time to time. When we said, well, who should actually be doing this as a service? They're like, well, maybe my bookkeeper or my CPA. And then we talk to the CPA sector, and a lot sort of challenge. A lot of them go, well, our customers aren't asking for it, or we think we could provide that, but they're not asking for it. And so I think on the CPA side, we've got two challenges. One, we've got a labor shortage, right? We're under the crunch. We've had many years of tough tax seasons. We're struggling to get through that basic work and the tax work, which is really important still in the tax planning.
Yep.
That we're struggling to free up time to do this type of work. And secondly, and I know sales is often seen as a dirty word in the accounting and bookkeeping profession, but there is real value that you can add here. We need to show the small businesses that we can be that help. So how do you find those signals that your small business clients might need this help? I always say being connected on cloud technology is a big start, because you can see how it's going and then reach out and go, hey, we've had a look at your numbers and there might be a cash flow issue. So you need to be actively out there offering this service. So I encourage accountants and bookkeepers to think about, how do you get more connected to the client? And then cloud technology is a massive help there. How do you free up capacity in your firm to be able to have time to do this? And again, you got to think about how you create practice efficiency through digitization, so that you can go beyond tax. It's all interconnected, because the small businesses need this help. They're not getting it now. And they do see you as the trusted advisor. So there's almost this, and small businesses always have this do-it-yourself mentality. And I do think, like, hey, let's show small business that it's smarter to go from do-it-yourself to do it together.
Right. I might be make the best cakes in town, but doesn't mean I can balance my checkbook or understand, a cash flow forecast. So exactly. What, in the report, was it showing that it did dive into kind of the financial consequences of cash flow issues? I think was the second point. I don't think we've touched on that yet, did we?
Yeah, there was a bit of that. So I think, the big thing we saw was that nearly half of them aren't able to pay themselves, right? Nearly half small business owners. Yeah. So having to work harder than ever to try and keep things going. They're the last ones to get paid. Yeah. Nearly a fifth of them, or 22%, were not able to pay bills. And 17% were unsure if they could keep the business going.
That's right.
What was interesting about that, and this goes back to what does that mean from a mental health perspective? So we asked some questions around the impact on personal well-being. 58% of the respondents believe that cash flow issues have negatively impacted their personal well-being over the last 12 months, with the top three impacts being 84% stress, 79% anxiety, and 64% sleepless nights. And so when you look at some of the anecdotal things that were shared as well, there was a lot of, I'm having to work harder than ever to try and keep the thing going. I'm having to miss time with family, spend time on the weekends. And so, again, when you think about, there's two elements: more stress than ever, can't disconnect from the business, which we know it's important to take time out and recharge. Financial stress is incredibly painful. This is a funny analogy, but I always say, you might look at a client that's in a really tough space, and there might, giving them, there might, when you do look at some scenarios around best and worst and likely case around where the business could go, the story mightn't be pretty, but there is a sense of confidence of knowing where you are. And I always use the analogy, we've all probably done a holiday at one point in our life where we went overseas and we got a bit excited and carried away, maybe a few too many margaritas, and we went heavy on the credit card. And you come back from the trip and you don't really want to check the credit card bill. You sort of dig your head in the sand, right? And so every day you don't, the anxiety builds.
Right.
And there's something quite therapeutic about the point where you actually log in, check the statement balance, you see the damage, and then you start to build a plan of, okay, how am I going to build myself back from that? And to me, that is, if we can, even if the story is not great, if we can help the small businesses really understand where they're at today, what some cash flow scenarios that look at where they're going to go in the future, and start to plan through, hey, what are some of the levers that we can pull? Under this scenario, we might need to go find additional funding. Is there options through the bank? Is there options through family? Making sure we keep the point you made at the start around, is there a point where we have to cut our losses? What are other levers we could pull today that are in front of us? There's a real sense of calm that comes from once you've done that work. It may not be a great story, but you now know what you can control. You now know what you can't, and you've got much more of a plan to go forward with. And that's probably one of the biggest things you can do to help a small business owner's well-being improve. And I think a lot of accountants and bookkeepers probably don't realize the impact that they can have on their small business clients' mental health and well-being, right? We often think we can help them with the tax, we can help them understand their numbers. When the partners that I see that are doing this well, and you think about the number of small businesses they touch and the scale of small businesses they're getting to, they're playing a huge part on helping improve mental health and well-being of the small business community. It's probably not something we think of that we are, but we are. That's the role that we can play when we do this well.
Yeah. And so well, that's a great segue into the last point. And that was around kind of strategies deployed was one of the other key questions that was asked in that survey. I'm reading over here to my other screen just to see what those high points were. So what the survey show out on that?
Yeah, so the big ones, the three top things that came through, and what are the strategies you've deployed to stimulate revenue and cut costs? That was the question, the sort of three things that came back. Obviously, 48% of people said that increased prices. 43% had worked to cut and reduce overheads. And 34% had said they'd reduced marketing and spend. One thing I would say, though, is you probably think that's a bit weird. If you're reducing your marketing cost, how's that helping cash flow or increase revenue? I think it's not always a cost out exercise, right? There's also a spend efficiency. So there is a world we're in now of disciplined growth. So looking at your marketing spend and going, is it, often if we get bogged down in the running of the business, or have I got help to understand, is my marketing spend as effective as it could be? The old 80-20 rule, you might have a small portion of your marketing investment is probably what's driving the greatest return. There's probably other areas of your marketing investment that aren't working well. And so businesses looking at those things to go, I might cut those areas back because they're not performing, put a bit more gas on this piece because it is, and actually freeing up a bit of cash as well. Pricing is an interesting one. I mean, I think it's another area where ABs can help coach their small businesses. In an inflation market that we've all seen, for every business, even the business that we operate in, even when you're continuing to grow and build things or for your customers, your labor costs are going up, your building costs are going up, all the costs have been going up, and they've been going crazy the last 3 years. And so small businesses do need to be thinking about, and as the survey showed, nearly half of them have increased their prices to do that. I sat at a forum with a whole lot of accountants from around the world at one of our Xero cons, and it was one of the things called out around how bad the profession is at actually being confident to raise fees. And so, we need to do a better job of that as accountants and bookkeepers, but also making sure we're helping coach our small businesses to do that. So half of them have done it. But again, there's still a lot out there that haven't, which probably could. The other thing I say, being mindful going forward, is inflation is still big this year and it's starting to come under control. I don't think we're fully out of the woods on that as well. But and you can't just rely on price increases. So making sure you're being fair with your price increases to adjust your prices against the increased cost of doing business, which everyone has been doing. And at the end of the day, you also need to stand back and go, at the new price point, are we still delivering the value that makes our product or service competitive and the customer feeling like they're getting a fair value exchange? But I'd say more often than not, there are businesses that are leaving value on the table and putting the cash flow at risk. So that was actually I was surprised by that stat. It was good to see that nearly half of small businesses have reacted that way.
Yeah, being willing to raise the price. And I liked your point on the marketing spend, because when I first read that, I'm like, no, don't reduce your marketing spend. That's like, and again, I'm I'm on the media side, right? So for
Yep.
all of my career, I've tried to get people to spend more money on marketing. And we know that, you spend less, well, historically, if
Yep.
you when it was a fairly black and white world with how you could market as a business, you cut your marketing, your business is going to go down. But what I like what you pointed out, and it's like you don't necessarily have to. Well, one, you're not ending your marketing. You're moving the dollars and paying attention to where the dollars are being most effective, and
Exactly.
cut out the waste, which we know there's a lot of waste in marketing.
Yeah,
Now
and
it's
again, it's
easier to
coming back to that
judge what's
getting,
wasted, not. But
yeah, getting more scientific around it. I mean, there might be a certain channel that you market in that drives customers who buy one of your higher margin products. So you should want to spend more on marketing that, right? Because it's an effective channel, but it's also driving a customer segment that's buying products that you get a higher margin from. Versus you might have another channel which drives customers, but they don't actually spend a lot. Their average spend per client's low, or they're buying a product where you have a lower margin. So it's that just taking a bit of a scientific approach. And I think it is, we've all come from an environment pre the pandemic and through the pandemic where suddenly money got really cheap. And it was very much a growth at all costs mentality. Debt was cheap and easy to get. And a lot of people tried lots of new things and focused on growth. And we're in a different world now. And I think every business is thinking, there are still growth opportunities out there, but you've got to be disciplined around how your growth, and you've got to be really, in the past where we might have got a bit reckless around where we're putting money in the small business, we actually need to really make sure, is that thing actually driving the ROI we want? And you still got to, many businesses that are starting up and growing, you still want to have money for for experiments, to try new things. But keeping that sort of micro test and learn environment where you can test something out and work out if it plays and scale it if it does. But it is, and the other thing to be really conscious of in this cash flow world is, just as I said before, credit. We've seen the challenges for the regional banks. We've seen the banking system tighten up a bit, and we've seen the interest rates go up. So debt is not cheap anymore. It's a lot more expensive than it was, and it's harder to get. So you can't just call the bank manager up and go, can we extend the overdraft? Because it might be a bit harder this time.
right.
And so one of my advice to small businesses is, do not wait until you hit that moment where you're running out of money, because it's really hard. It takes longer, and it's harder to get debt in this environment. And often if you've waited to that moment where you're in the crunch, it's harder to get it. I always look back at the GFC when, Ford and GM in 2008, and, one of those players had gone and extended all its debt facilities ahead of time and had a lot of good headroom, the other didn't. So again, if the business is running well, think about, do I have the rainy day fund? So is it appropriate to go and make sure my debt facilities are appropriate and have room and headroom ahead of time? Because then you can be proactive, your accountant can work with you, you can, you go and you'll show up well at the bank, you'll show up prepared. It's not like you're going to be as desperate. And if it takes you a bit longer to find that money, then you've got time. So be proactive in making sure you've got the cash flow, the funding to support, versus waiting when it really bites you.
Yeah, and so what is so you've got reports like this. What else is Xero doing just in the space for both the accountants and SMBs?
Yeah, great question. So I'll do a quick short plug. We recently did our Xero Beautiful Business Fund, where we which is probably one of my highlights of my year. We open up a whole lot of categories around businesses doing awesome things around sustainability, innovating with technology, innovating with growing their business. And we had lots of small businesses from around the world apply, and we got to see all their stories. And we gave over $750,000 away in different grants to regional winners in each country and then global winners. So that was actually really powerful to see. And lots of our ABs helped champion their small businesses to enter that. So that was it was a really nice positive thing, just to take a different turn from talking about cash flow challenges. So it was awesome to see what small businesses doing out there, and we really love working with our partners to be able to get out and celebrate some of those small businesses and help with those grants. We run a lot of reports. So the other one that's been just come out as well is the Xero State of the Industry report. So we run this report. You can go to our I think if you just Google Xero XERO State of the Industry. We run this report where we survey a whole lot of accountants and bookkeepers around the US just to look at key insights around what's happening in this space. We run it in every country. So if you really want to geek out with it, you can change US and the IRL to AU and see all the different what's happening across the accounting and bookkeeping profession in different countries. But sort of the key insights that we found from the latest report is it's been a really good year. Practices across the board have reported growth from the ones that we surveyed. So 75% reported an increase in revenue and 73% reported an increase in profit in the past 12 months. And small, medium, and large practices have experienced the greatest increases. Micro practices are less likely to have seen this growth at 24%, have reported that they've stayed stable this year. The second one is, as we know, bookkeeping and compliance services remain key. And there's actually, as I always say, they're connected still to CAS. There's the continuing shift to CAS client advisory services is happening, which practices are saying are bringing client servicing and growth benefits. So from the survey group, CAS is now offered by 41% of the practices that we talk to. And for 19% of those practices, they've added that service in the last 12 months. So still lots of firms entering the space. So it's still a very fast growing service line for accountants. And to our previous discussion on cash flow, this is really the critical piece to being able to be that advisor and to be connected to the client, to be doing their data regularly so that you can then build on that advisory service on top. A lot of the other thing I think which is on the CAS space is we saw that CAS may also be the reason why many practices are growing. Back to the growth stat, the firms that reported offering CAS have reported adding more clients in the last year compared to those who don't offer CAS. So if you offer CAS, you added 58 new clients versus 33 if you said you didn't add CAS. So you can see it's a key lever for growing your client base. An increasing number of practices have reported billing using value-based pricing. So even though many firms have been on this journey for a long time, there's still a lot of time-based billing that goes on out there, but they're seeing the commercial and client benefits that it brings. So the majority of the practices we surveyed, just over 60%, have at least 25% of their client base on either value-based pricing models. So it's good to see that's still checking up. Onto cloud, of those surveyed, cloud usage is high and the benefits are wide-ranging. So practices are sort of agreeing that cloud users do better work for clients and have a happier workforce. So the reasons they're looking to adopt cloud are both operational and commercial. So there's sort of benefits across the board. So who we surveyed, 2/3 of all the practices agree that cloud using practices have higher staff retention, 66%. And attract more new staff, 68%. And that's super important when you think about the labour shortage and the competitive labour space for accounting talent. And the majority of those surveyed, 71%, agree that practices that use cloud-based software can service their clients better. And the last point is that practices that surveyed who use cloud-based software are more likely to report increases in their commercial metrics. So we surveyed the users we surveyed were also more likely to have a report on increase in revenue. So higher cloud, 78% versus 58% of non-cloud users. And the growth in profit was from 75% of cloud users versus 54% in the non-cloud users. So, and we saw about 35% of those practices surveyed directly cited the use of cloud software as the reason for their revenue increase. So the reason we do these reports is obviously there's lots of stuff out there for AB saying you should do this, why aren't you doing this? And really, again, it helps inform us on where practices are at and where the challenges are and where the opportunities are so that we can better hone our products and services and the support and partnership we provide the profession. But also it helps give some, we're accountants, so you can tell me I should do CAS, but I think it's more meaningful when you look at your peers and can see meaningful data points around the impact it's having on their practice.
Absolutely. So what do you have any like firsthand? So, as we talked in the green room, kind of, this is what the report says. You've got a lot of accountants that you deal with again on a regular basis. Are the clients that you're dealing with, are they seeing similar type results as to what was presented in this study?
Yeah, we spoke about in the last time of the podcast, right? The journey to advisory and you definitely see those that are willing to, there's that, what is CAS? And then there's a, how do I get to it? And so some firms, there's definitely firms that have sort of set it up and gone, I'm going to start up a CAS department, I'm going to pick some of the cool kids, put them down the back of the office. and they can go find some CAS clients. And I highly encourage firms to go think about integrated advisory, right? If you're doing 500 small business tax returns, you don't need new clients. How do you go, like this secret what we call is write up, which is often doing the whole year's worth of bookkeeping, cleaning up the client's mess to get to a tax return.
Yeah.
We're running client advisory services, which means potentially outsourced accounting for them throughout the year. That makes our tax return business way more sticky and way more efficient. And now we're connected to that client, and we can build those services on top. So I think you need to think about CAS as a connected part of your overall firm strategy, not a silo. So practices that I'm seeing do that really well are really starting to see benefits on the tax side of the house. They're doing tax returns faster, cleaner, and the clients are less likely to leave them because they have that regular engagement. And they're driving much more increase in revenue per client because they can see what the client's doing because they're working with them throughout the year. There's still a lot of firms that are dipping their toe. And I always say, whenever you're going to try something, don't jump in the deep end, totally get that. But also, if you don't put your foot in, you're not going to get a sense of the water. So, you really have to think about, and this is where we actually get really fired up at Xero, is the team at Xero here that are out across the country. How do we work with firms to connect them to other firms in our community that have done it before, to help guide them? We have ambassadors and evangelists to help support other practices go on this journey. So you're working with a peer. We love to share best practices from all the partners that we work with to help get you started. But the other scary thing for me is, we have such a range of partners now, from the big end of town down to small. I think that the T100 really get CAS. They're building out sophisticated CAS departments. Always remember, though, it's not the big. Our founder Rod always used to say, it's not the big that eat the small. It's often the fast that eat the slow. So there's a real opportunity for the emerging new practices that are starting with clean technology and without the legacy as well. So I think, but what's kind of scary is we have a lot of innovative partners that CAS is so yesterday, right? They've had CAS running for nearly a decade in their practice, and they're moving on to the next thing. And I have a lot of fun chatting to those practices because they're like, why are you still talking about CAS, Ben? And I'm like, well, scary thing is there's still so many practices that aren't doing it. They can't get out of the challenge of compliance. Compliance is awesome. It's the backbone of the profession still. And actually, as I said before, it's connected to doing advisory. But there's so many that it's still scary how many firms aren't at that point where they can offer CAS. And I think it's exciting, right? You've been reporting on this segment for a long time, and technology was always going to, there's always the doomsday people that technology will be the end of the accounting profession. Well, we're 2 decades into cloud plus, and it has given us more opportunities than ever, and we're still struggling to get out of compliance. So I think my advice is embrace technology, because when we're sitting in a world where there's two for every 2 jobs in accounting, there's only 1 candidate. We need a lot of these technology solutions to help automate, streamline a lot of those lower value compliance tasks, so we can get to the real high value power that we bring in advisory.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're a 10-year-old firm, 15-year-old firm, there's somebody that's coming out of college tomorrow who has already embraced the cloud technology, who has already been taught a lot of this information, and can go and will go out and start taking your business.
Yeah, and then we have
tomorrow,
business ownership's changing, right? So it's that you've got the grads coming out that, to be fair, you can start a firm now with a laptop and a car.
Yep.
And you can be out there meeting the clients on site, running a totally different level of service. But we also have to remember the clients are changing, right? We've got Gen Z now coming into business ownership. We've got the millennials firmly entrenched in business ownership, and they want to engage totally different. So we have to meet the clients where they are. And yeah, I mean, it's change is scary, but I think it's a really exciting time for the profession.
Well, I think it is too. I think massive opportunities, and that's even, if I look at my business of one, and just seeing how we work with our accountant and how we've worked with accountants in the past, and what I would say are some gaps in service, current and in the past, are just massive opportunities, again, in my opinion. And a lot of that is around that advisory, and it's around what we were talking about before in the cash flow. Call me once a month, or send me an email, or have an automation set up that says, hey, by the way, your bank balance is at X, and your receivables are at Y, and this is what you typically get in receivables in a month. You're going to be out of money in 3 months. What
I
are we
think so,
doing?
helping educate them on how to use the
Oh,
tools better, because you used it. I mean, as accountants, we're in a lot of these tools every day, right? For our small business owners, that not a lot of them not accountants, and B, not technology experts. And like, it amazes me, and the cash flow stats we're looking at. We have a functionality in our product where you can set up Xero to auto remind auto send invoice reminders if they haven't paid you, and you got to go turn that on. And it still amazes me how many small businesses haven't utilized that part of the product, because again,
right.
they're not accounting software natives. They want they want to get it set up, but we're a big part of helping educate them to get the most power out of the software. Which parts will matter more to them than other parts they don't need to worry about. So again, we can be a big player in helping educate on technology as well, and make sure they're using it to the full power.
Yep. Well, don't want to run out of time, which I think we've gone long anyway. So two more questions. One is, what is going on at Xero? And by that, I mean, I know when last time we talked, and then at Xero, what is it, the road show you did here in Atlanta, I had some conversations with some of your people there. Sounds like Xero's making obviously you have an investment in Denver. You're investing here I'm in the Atlanta area. Any other areas around the country that are on that kind of target list for Xero currently?
Yeah, that's a good question. So overall, at a global level, it's a really exciting chapter, and we are entering a new chapter at Xero. We're really excited by the results we took to the market at the end of our first half, which came out in November. And what it really showed was a focus on, we're still growing, we're growing EBITDA, growing free cash flow, but and a good result from a net profit perspective. So as we really focus on, we're a growth company, but it's about disciplined, customer-centric growth. And North America is a really big part of that growth story. It's been, we talked to the market about, we just did a big deep dive on our US strategy, and we sort of shared some insights for that and where we're really going to be focusing. We are really focusing in on the CAS accounting and bookkeeping space, client advisory services, and really thinking about making sure our products are set up to play strongly in that space. At the roadshows, we launched the new automated sales tax with a whole suite of new reporting powered by Avalara into the platform. That's now out, and customers are using it. We're seeing great response from the customers that are jumping in early. We also launched our Xero Inventory Plus for sort of businesses that are selling multi-channel e-commerce and hybrid retail e-commerce. That platform's now out, and customers can sign up for that. So, a much stronger solution for businesses in the goods space. It's always doing lots of work in the bank feed space. So we've been bringing more and more direct feeds out as part of that. And, our focus in the US is very much, we have teams on the ground. Atlanta is a key focus city. There's a lot of other cities. We have about 8 cities where we have teams on the ground. We have account managers. We have CPAs that support as partner consultants. We have our ambassador network. So we really, we pride ourselves on showing up. Yes, we're a technology company, but it's the power of us as people helping customers go through this journey. So, we've been pushing hard on those elements, and we're growing. We're really in North America. The last half, we grew our subscribers to 396,000. And our US business, it's got good momentum, and it delivered a really good balance between subscriber growth and ARPU expansion. So as you know, the investor market has changed, and so it's not growth at all costs for companies. And for Xero, we've been on this journey for a long time around sort of those key milestones around looking at cash flow, self-funding, being able to grow ARPU, lifetime value of a subscriber. So no, it was a really exciting set of results. Lots of changes. We've got lots of new people joining. Sukhinder joining as our new CEO, who's ex-Google and was a founder of Yodely. She's based in the Bay Area. Our new chief product officer, Dia Jolly, has come across from Okta and Google also. So she's joined. So lots of new talent joining, which is exciting as well as we really gear up for the next phase. But one thing that remains really true for us, we are maniacally focused on small business and helping them. And we believe that, and we believe and we know, because this is why the business was originally founded, the power that an accountant and bookkeeper play in that equation. And so as we think of, when we think about our mission for small business, the accountants and bookkeepers are such a key part of that mission. And so as we think about our tools, how do we help them be more connected to small business?
And how do you and we'll wrap on this. How does Xero define small business?
Yeah, so I mean, from the cash flow study, we look at sort of 0 to 50 employees, but we go pretty well up to 0 to 100 employees. It's a tough one because there is a lot of different definitions. The definitions
Right.
change by country, but yeah, really businesses that are employing people up to about 100 is where Xero really plays well. As you know, with our ecosystem, it can often take us further up the value chain, but that sort of 0 to 50 employees is the real sweet spot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what that was. Yeah, because the U.S. government would tell you, 5,000 employees and under is a small business. Like,
Yeah.
what? Lost your mind.
Yeah.
So, which we all know they've all lost their minds anyway. Let's wrap up on XeroCon, one of the best shows in the space, August the 14th, 14th and 15th, 2024 in Nashville, Tennessee. So you're going to get a big hat and some boots. Well, you're in Denver. You might already have a big hat and boots.
Yeah, I do actually have a big Stetson hat, just so people. So even though I've lived here for 7 years, I thought I can go get myself a Stetson. But no, we're super excited. Look, XeroCon is, I remember a journalist once calling it the Coachella for accountants. So it's getting the accounting and bookkeeping community together, who are part of the Xero family, bringing together all the technology partners that are in our ecosystem and our strategic partners, and coming together to really learn. I think what I'm excited about this one is we're going to have lots of product to share, lots of cool announcements, and a great fun time together. Nashville is going to be a great place to have it. One of the trends that I'm seeing, which is super exciting, is XeroCon used to be very country by country. And this year we're switching it up a bit. We're sort of moving it on a rolling schedule around the world. And so I was actually down at XeroCon in the Southern Hemisphere, where we get partners across Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. And we launched XeroCon Nashville. And the amount of Australian partners and New Zealand and Asian partners that we're yahooing that want to actually start to travel the world and come up to the Nashville XeroCon. And, I'm pretty pumped about it being a global event, because as I've had experience in every different country around the world with accountants and bookkeepers, there's different strengths and weaknesses, and bringing a global community of ABs together to be able to share and learn, and every country's got its own differences, I think it's going to be super powerful. So I think we're going to see more partners than ever at XeroCon Nashville, and we're going to have more things to tell you about than ever, because we are really serious about this market. But we're also going to have lots of people coming in from around the world as well. So it's just going to be a great place to be, and a lot of fun as well. We'll be pretty tired, everyone's always pretty tired when they jump on the plane and fly home from that event.
Yeah, everyone I've been to has been a great event, a fun event, a lot of great people. So we'll wrap on that, but the key thing, so this report, I'm pretty sure we put this report on Insightful Accountant, but if not, we'll certainly get it up there. We'll get that cash flow report there. We'll also get it was it called State of the Profession or State of the Industry? What did you
State of the Industry. I know it covers both accountants and bookkeepers. So if it was the state of CPAs, we call it the state of the profession, because I know it's important. But yeah, it's the industry, and if you're a CPA, of course, it's the profession.
Okay, great. Yeah, and we'll get that posted as well. And we'll put those links down in the recording, and then we'll again have it on the website. Ben, thank you so much. Appreciate you carving out some time. I think we said 20 or 25 minutes, but I think we may have gone 50. So sorry about that. Well, it's probably snow build up a little bit more for you before you walk home.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, if we don't talk, have a wonderful Christmas, and we will talk to you very soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you by Out of the Box Technology. Out of the Box Technology is your partner in accounting data services. With over 7,500 industry migrations performed and an expansive network of third-party integrations, a partnership with Out of the Box will augment your advisory practice and turbocharge client accounting operations. Visit outoftheboxtechnology.com/insightful-accountant to get started.